Chris Larson here with Flag Family Media coming to you live from the North Dakota GOP convention at the Sanford Health and Athletic Complex in Fargo. Second day of the North Dakota GOP convention underway, and we've got a lot going on so far today. We are going to be hearing from former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. He is going to be the keynote speaker this afternoon. That is coming up at about 1:30. Plus, you've got the endorsements for governor, lieutenant governor, Congress, and Senate. All of those things yet to come this afternoon here from the Sanford Health and Athletic Complex on the campus of North Dakota State University. I'm Chris Larson. I'm going to bring you a little bit of an update as to what we've got going on today. First of all, if you missed yesterday, you missed a whole lot. It started out right away yesterday morning with the GOP debate debacle or delegate debacle. District 37, there was questions as to whether or not the candidates or the delegates, I should say, were seated properly. Came to a vote of all of the delegates at the convention, and they were ended up being seated. Later on in the day, as the convention continued, one of our guests today defeated or won the GOP support for the Office of Department of Public Instruction. We're going to visit with Jim Bartlett, the Republican-supported candidate for the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction superintendent. He won that support over Kirsten Baszler. We'll talk to Jim in just a moment. Then, in another interesting change of events, Shane Gettle, the national committeeman, unseated by Dr. Steve Nagel. I had a chance to visit with Dr. Nagel this morning, and a lot of great things coming out of that on yesterday. The attendance-wise, really strong attendance for the North Dakota GOP party. Right around 2,000 here today, and it's just going to be a great day for North Dakota Republicans. Of course, Governor Kelly Armstrong's going to look for the support there. U.S. House, Julie Fedorchak, Rick Becker, all of that's going to be very interesting. Who wins that race? Alex Ballas running as well. A lot to come up. Ballas running for that spot in the U.S. House. That could be a race, folks, that's going to be very interesting as the afternoon goes on. And then again, the Senate race, Senator Kevin Kramer, who I had a chance to visit with today. He's here today. It's just a great day of who's who in North Dakota, the GOP party. Of course, going on across town today, the Democratic MPL convention. I had a chance to visit with Adam Goldwyn last night. They had about 200 delegates at their convention last night, so we'll be watching that as well. Trygve Hammer running over there. A lot of great races happening. But now I'm going to welcome into our programming the Republican Party supported candidate for the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, Jim Bartlett. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
I tell you what, your thoughts on the convention so far?
It's been very inspiring. There's a lot of people that realize that faith is needed in the public square, and the reduction of it and replacement of it with other philosophies needs to change.
Absolutely. Now, yesterday at the convention, you were looking for the support of the GOP in a race against Kirsten Baszler, the current superintendent of public instruction. Of course, you won that letter of support. It's not an endorsed position. It's a nonpartisan position. Tell me a little bit about your background, Jim.
Yes, I taught engineering at NDSU for 17 years, and then I directed the North Dakota Homeschool Association for 6 years, and we started a farm in Bottineau. So we moved from Fargo to Bottineau in 2004 and started Bartlett Farms. So we have a dairy and a diversified organic style farm and a little store next to the Quilt Inn at Lake Midgoshi.
Absolutely. When it comes to leading public instruction, you said you were the director of the Homeschool Association. One question I always have, and I've asked of Superintendent Baszler too, I'll ask it of you. a lot of talk is on school choice. Where do you stand with that?
I think it's a good idea. Yep, parents need a lot of choice. I do think choosing which school you want to be indoctrinated in is a limited choice, and that could be further improved by giving parents free choice on other aspects than just the location of the school.
Absolutely. The other thing, and you had a press conference this morning. One thing that has come up so many times in the education realm is CRT. Do you feel that in North Dakota that CRT is still being taught? And if you do,
Yep.
what do we do?
Identify it. In fact, this critical race theory, it's Marxism, and it's brought into race instead of class, and now it's even gone into victim side. So you could call it critical victim theory, or you could call it critical emotion theory, because all of those things are embedded in the curriculum. So if you look at emotional social learning and ideas like 2 + 2 = 5 today, and it feels good, so it must be right,
Mhm.
that's a evidence of the critical race theory. Or you look at the victim side of things. So if you give an excuse that you can't do something because of this or that, you're playing the victim. And so that's emphasized in the schools, and it comes from things like postmodern philosophy,
Mhm.
and that has an aspect of anti-realism. And so people are really needing to get back to truth, because they're trying to create their own truth, and they don't find a very good answer.
When you look at the education realm, I know that one of the things that Superintendent Basler has prided herself on is high graduation rates. If you were to win the election for superintendent of public instruction, what areas that are currently being worked on would you look to improve on?
I would start with the strategic objective, changing that so that we remove all of the false and evil philosophies. So that'll flush out a lot of the problems, and when you get down to the graduation rate, it really doesn't tell you anything, because you can get kids through the system. And so then they become choice ready for a woke type of military, or they're choice ready for going to a college and doing remedial algebra when they're going to engineering school. So those types of systems that are currently in place are really smokescreens. They're not really related to education. Most of it is protecting an indoctrination system that's been around since 1933. John Dewey, really championed that through the system.
What in Superintendent Basler's message and in her leadership do you feel needs to be changed, and what would you do to change that if you were elected?
Yes. Well, first of all, the superintendent does have the ability to set the strategic objective for the schools.
Right.
And they supervise the policy development, as well as the standards for teachers and standards for students and testing. And so all of those things would change if you had something that directed morals into the curriculum. The North Dakota Constitution requires the teaching of morals to children. In 1889, when the North Dakota Constitution was ratified, they were using dictionaries like Webster's 1828 original dictionary. He was the founding father of American public education and scholarship. And if you look at morals in that dictionary, it says basically the ability to discern good and evil. Look up good, look up evil, and you've got definitions coming from the Bible. So if you take the whole public school system and use the original ideas from the North Dakota Constitution, realizing that the North Dakota did have a Christian history just like the rest of America, and then flush out those things that are working against it. The big other issue is neutrality. People think that public schools are neutral religiously, but that is a myth. There's 6 general worldviews. Christianity is one of them. I won't explain the other 6, but the humanism is the one that is allowed in the public school, has been for a long time. There's books that explain that, and I would remove the bad philosophies, and so then you'd have a lot more time to teach math and science.
Absolutely. Your education background with directing the homeschools, what do you feel qualifies you to be superintendent of public instruction?
Well, I've seen both inside the box and outside the box. I went to public school, went to public college, taught in a tech school, taught at NDSU, and have been, even 1984 when I became a Christian, I lived with pastors that were traveling to North Dakota to fight the Department of Public Instruction about the compulsory school laws, when homeschoolers were trying to be free to homeschool and Christian schools were in the fight at the same time. So I learned really since 1984 that the philosophies are really interesting, because they drive what's happening in the culture. And to see them and understand them is not that complicated once you see them. It's really hidden from our view most of the time. But once we just read a little bit about that, I recommend summit.org and search chart, and you'll see a quick view of the 6 different worldviews and how that plays out and how we can tie things like the transgender policy in Fargo. So if you call the public schools and ask them for their transgender inclusion document, you'll see they have a plan on how to change the gender of children in Fargo without letting parents know. So the philosophies behind that include the anti-realism part of postmodernism, and they include other things like the social evolution. So it's like they want to separate parents from children because they believe in evolution. In other words, there's no spirit in man and there's no God, so society has to make the best of that.
People want to learn more about you and what you believe and what you stand for with the Department of Public Instruction. How can people do so?
I do have a website, bartlettspi.org, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Bartlett SPI, and that's a good place to start. And then we need a lot of people to help with the campaign. And so if they're interested in what we're doing or just want to know more, can invite me to events, and I'll be happy to come if I can get there.
That's bartlettforspi.org.
Yeah, Bartlett SPI, BARTLETTSPI.org.
bartlettspi.org. Jim Bartlett joining us. He is the Republican-supported candidate for the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction's, the superintendent of public instruction, beating out longtime Superintendent Kirsten Baszler yesterday for the Republican support. Jim, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it, sir, and best of luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, that is Jim Bartlett here joining us on AM 1100, the Flags coverage of the North Dakota Republican State Convention on digitalnorthmedia.com, coming to you live from the Sanford Health and Athletic Complex in Fargo, North Dakota. Of course, Scott Hennon, Steve Hallstrom, yours truly, Chris Larson. We're all here enjoying a fun afternoon of events. Scott and Steve were here yesterday. Coming up here at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to be joined by the president and managing partner of Flag Family Media, Steve Hallstrom. We'll talk a little bit about what we've seen so far in this Republican Party state convention, what we should expect this afternoon. Of course, like I said, Kelly Armstrong running for governor. Is he going to get that nod? Who's going to get the nod for the U.S. House? Who's going to get the nod for the United States Senate? It's all going to come down to what happens this afternoon. Don't forget, coming up after the event today, right here on Facebook and YouTube, we will have we will hopefully be visiting with the winners of the governor's nomination or endorsement, Senate and House again. Governor nomination. If Kelly Armstrong wins it, who's he going to face in the Democratic Party? We're going to find all of that out today. Who's going to be representing on both sides? Kelly Armstrong, should he get the nomination, he's going to join us here on the live stream. We'll again have a live stream. It's going to be about 4:30 whenever the Republican state convention completes. Stay tuned to our Facebook page, the AM 1100, the Flag Facebook page, as well as the What's on Your Mind Facebook page. I'll have updates this afternoon as to when our coverage here online will begin. And Scott Hennon, I believe, is going to join me for that this afternoon. Again, the storylines, so many storylines still to come this afternoon. The resolutions, there's a couple of big resolutions, abortion resolution, just so many resolutions that are going to be discussed. I want to say there's 7 or 8 of them. They'll be voted on here this afternoon. And, of course, the big keynote speaker today, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Mike will be in the house. We'll be able to visit with him or hear from him, hear what message he has for North Dakota Republicans as they choose who is going to represent them in many statewide offices. Of course, there's offices across the state that, the tax commissioner, Brian Crocious, I've seen Brian here today, public service commissioner, Randy Chrisman, ran unopposed. John Godfrey, insurance commissioner, state auditor Thomas Beadle, um, as well as Josh Gallion, or state treasurer Thomas Beadle, state auditor Josh Gallion. They all were at a press conference this morning, had really good things to say about the state of North Dakota. Of course, all our coverage on AM 1100 The Flag. You can head over to our websites, AM1100theflag.com, AM1090theflag.com, and WDAYradionow.com to find all our coverage from the 2024 North Dakota Republican Party State Convention here at the Sanford Health and Athletic Complex in Fargo, North Dakota. I told you a little bit earlier about a little bit of a little kerfluffle yesterday here on the grounds of the Republican convention involving District 37. Now, they contended that their delegates were properly seated, and that turned into one heck of a dogfight here earlier yesterday. Let's take a look at some video.
Those challenging our credentials demand us to think. We are sorry we believe that Senators John Hoeven and Kevin Cramer represent the state of North Dakota exceptionally well in Washington. We are also sorry that we believe Representative Kelly Armstrong is the best of us and is not only an exceptional representative, but will be an incredible governor for our great state. We are sorry that we seem to have forgotten the great Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment. Thou shalt not speak ill of any fellow Republican. When we offer contrition, we are looking for forgiveness. We in District 37 want the complainants to know that we are not looking for contrition. We don't need an apology. We have already forgiven them for what they have done. We are ready to move on and get back to the business of this great party. However, if you vote to unseat us, we and the rest of the great state of North Dakota will likely find this incredibly hard to forget. This fractures our party, possibly irreparably. It does not unite, it divides. Let 37 speak.
So there was that. That's what started it. And then current Congressman running for governor, Kelly Armstrong, who is from District 37, got up and he had this to say.
The convention process has to matter. I love it. I think it is the single best way to do it. Each and every person here took time out of a Friday to come. Let us vote. Let us do it. Don't be short-sighted. Any definition of any problem, I don't care who's right, who is wrong, but I know who's not. It's the delegates who drove 300 miles from my hometown to be here. If you're screwed up, have it out, figure it out. But there are 14 open seats from District 37. That means 14, unless 15 people would have signed up who actually objected to how it happened, nobody from there is disenfranchised. We have the opportunity, we have a great 48 hours here, and we have an opportunity to prove everybody right that we can't govern amongst ourselves. So with all due respect to my friends on the other side, please, please, please defeat this amendment.
That amendment that Kelly Armstrong was talking about was an amendment that would not allow, if passed, would not allow District 37 to seat their delegates. It was brought to the floor for a vote, and the crowd decided, or the delegates decided to seat District 37 here at the state convention. It's been a great day. A lot of great things happening here at the Sanford Health and Athletic Complex in Fargo. and a lot still to come here this afternoon. I'm going to be joined here momentarily by my good friend Steve Hallstrom. Steve is the president and managing partner here at Flag Family Media. Steve and I will talk a little bit about what Steve sees as some of the big keys that have come from this Republican state party here in the state of North Dakota in the last going on now 24 plus hours. So Steve will join us here in a moment. And again, stay tuned at our websites, am1100theflag.com, am1090theflag.com, and WDAY radionow.com, as we will have all the coverage for you as the TikTok of the afternoon happens. I had a chance to visit with Senator Kevin Kramer today. Attorney General Drew Wrigley's in the house. Sherry Haugen-Hoffert from the North Dakota Public Service Commission is in the house. I'm hoping to still get a chance to visit with Kirsten Baszler, the current superintendent of public instruction, sometime this afternoon, and get her thoughts on how things are going with education, K-12 ed in North Dakota. Just a lot of freedom-loving patriots here today. Jim, the flagpole guy from U.S. Flagpole Guy and IndyFlagpoleGuy.com is here. Had a chance to see Jim. Didn't have a chance to visit with him, but saw him earlier today. Our own Scott Hannon, What's on Your Mind radio program at 8:30 to 11 on Monday. We'll have all sorts of reaction from this Republican state convention. And again, that will begin at 8:30 on Monday here on AM 1100 The Flag, AM 1090 The Flag. We'll be visiting with Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, at 9:30. And Mark Wagner from ND Estate Services is scheduled to be on the show at 10:30. We're trying to track down some more guests. We're trying to get lined up with Dr. Steve Dangle, the National Committeeman, Lori Hins, National Committee woman. Was in a press conference with both of them this morning. A lot of great things happening within the Republican National Committee that you're going to want to stay tuned about here as the election comes full tilt. Really, this is the start to the run to the election for so many positions, including President of the United States. It's going to be a dogfight between Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, and Joe Biden, the Democrat, the current sitting president. And everybody that I've talked to here at this state convention has pretty much said the same thing. We've got to get Donald Trump back in office. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we hope to be visiting with Steve Hallstrom. Steve is the president and managing partner of Flag Family Media. We'll take a break. Back after this. Back at the Sanford Health Athletic Complex on the campus of North Dakota State University for our coverage of the North Dakota Republican Party State Convention here in Fargo. I'm Chris Larson, producer of What's on Your Mind, and joining me now is the Brain Trust of Flag Family Media, president and managing partner.
That's a scary thought right there.
President and managing partner of Flag Family Media, Steve Hallstrom, joining me. And Steve, Day number 2 started a little bit less dramatic than day number 1.
Well, we started with a prayer breakfast for a lot of us today, and that was a great way to start the day with Carson Wentz and Amy Olson and listen to them talk about their walk with God and balancing that with being in the public sphere and all the things that they go through. That was really a fun way to begin the day. And then came over here and we heard the Capstone Classical Academy kids reciting. I'm not sure what that was, the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. I walked in about halfway through, and at least I'm told it was about halfway through. And it was fun to hear those kids who have memorized some of those really important documents and great verbiage from the founding of our country. So that got us off to a great start. And you're right, there were less fireworks here this morning. There was some proceedings that I think were interesting. And I think I heard Scott call them eye raising or eyebrow raising, and I think that's probably accurate. That there were delegates named to the National Convention. We have 3 of them in North Dakota, so 3 people that will be our delegates to go to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee in July. And one of those was Rick Becker, elected, just showing that Rick has a good, strong amount of support, certainly within this convention. And we've seen that in a couple different cases where his name has come up for one reason or another. And so while he ran against John Hoeven for Senate last time around, so can't run as a Republican this time, he still is a Republican, still a delegate, can still be here as a voting member, just cannot be endorsed for office going forward. So thought that was interesting. And he was one of the 3 that went. And on the list of people that are not going are Doug Burgum, Kevin Kramer, John Hoeven, Kelly Armstrong, and Scott's opinion, and I think he's right about that, is that that is a significant message that is being sent, saying that the kind of old guard in the Republican Party is being watched very carefully right now. And some people are not happy with the voting and some of the things that have been said and done, and feeling like maybe it's time for some new perspectives to be considered. And so having Rick Becker in that group that will be going to Milwaukee in July, I thought was very interesting this morning.
Taking a look at yesterday, it started off with fireworks, the District 37 delegate debacle, and then we move on. Kirsten Baszler loses the party's support for superintendent of public instruction. Then Dr. Steve Nagel defeats Shane Gettle for national committeeman. Those 2 races, Baszler and Nagel, weren't even really that close.
They weren't. I'm completely with you. Not shocking that they lost, but none of the things that really were voted on here yesterday were all that close. And the Baszler Bartlett conversation was really interesting. She got waxed 900 to 400, something like that. It wasn't even close. And so it's not uncommon for the convention to make a statement and knowing full well that somebody will go forward and probably win. Kirsten Baszler has been in that office for 3 terms, going for a 4th. She's well known. I don't think she's disliked at a high level. You don't hear a lot of people that are, really upset with her. There have been some things in her past with some personal issues, but she's largely moved past those things and kind of stayed out of controversy, if you will. But Jim Bartlett came in and gave a very passionate message about getting back to the basics of education. And right now, if you take a look what's happening in our schools, it's going to be very tough for anybody who is a Republican or a conservative to continue gaining support, knowing how many things are perceived issues, at least from conservatives, are going on in the schools right now, test scores and social issues and things like that. Not all of them are things that chop our kids down every single day. Not all of those are big controversial items, but I think people are saying we need to somehow do something to turn the tide in our schools, and testing processes and the proficiency reports. Those things are items that are definitely up for discussion with a lot of people. And so the people here spoke yesterday about that. And that was probably the biggest surprise of the whole day in my mind.
This afternoon, we got a lot still to come. We got a keynote from former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, and then we get down to the real business of 3 big races that we're going to decide who the endorsement goes to. Governor, United States Senate, United States House. The intriguing one to me, honestly, is that Becker, Fedorchak, Alex Ballas race right now.
Yeah, so Rick Becker will not be in that process because of what we had talked
Right.
about before. He is going to advance to the primary and continue his campaign, and he will be a Republican nominee, I guess you would say. Not nominee, that's not the right word. He will be on the ballot, but he will not be able to garner support here, formal
Right.
support anyway, at this. So it is Ballas and Fedorchuk, like you had mentioned. And the comments that we're hearing that I heard from Scott, who's tied in with people much closer to the party than I am, is that that is not necessarily a rubber stamp for Julie Fedorchuk. And there are a lot of people that are very interested in hearing from Alex Ballas. Apparently, he's been a veteran like Army, Navy, and Air Force or something
Yes.
like that. So there's a lot of people that are very curious about him. And as we saw yesterday, someone like Jim Bartlett, farmer, small business guy, homeschool advocate, can come into this convention and gain a lot of support. So that's going to be a really interesting race to watch. The Fedorchuk camp is out. They've been very strong here, very noticeable, and delivering the message about their candidate. But maybe this is the convention where the Republican Party tells the candidates and the incumbents that we're looking for something different. And if you don't deliver it, we're not afraid to make changes.
The U.S. Senate race, Senator Kevin Cramer, I had a chance to visit with him today, running unopposed. That's pretty straightforward, I feel.
I think so, Chris. I don't see any real drama there. I imagine you may have some people that may try to pull some sort of lever in the voting. We've seen Democrats vote for undeclared now or uncommitted, and you've seen things like that. If there are people that feel like there's a point that needs to be made there, or you may have people abstain from voting potentially. We've not really seen or heard that there's a big organized effort to make big statements there, but that will be interesting because I can see some people saying there's a way to still send Kevin forward, and he's certainly going to be. He's not running with any competition, but people have ways of making their points when they want to do that. So that will be interesting voting to watch today.
And then the governor's race, of course, the big news that came out yesterday or the day before is that Tammy Miller, the lieutenant governor currently, she's running for the governor's position. She's named her running mate to Josh Teagan, the current commerce commissioner. They're not here at the convention. They went the convention,
Yeah.
and so that leads Kelly Armstrong. Kelly's going to be here today. Rumor has it, at least I've learned from other sources, that Kelly's going to name his lieutenant governor pick sometime today. So the palace intrigue is there for that. Kelly Armstrong, of course, giving up his seat to the U.S. House to come home and run for governor.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think that's going to be an interesting part of the afternoon. We've heard some names floated around. I hear the name Michelle Comer thrown out there more than anyone else. Michelle certainly has a lot of experience in state government, knows the process, but a business owner as well. And I think Kelly, being a really good attorney and a politician for a number of years, probably the thing that he needs to add to his team is somebody that has that high level executive experience, the entrepreneurship, having run a business, someone who's made payroll, someone who's had to sell a product, things like that. And Michelle certainly checks that box. Plus, she's a name that a lot of people know. She has a good reputation, has bounced around maybe just a little bit in some of the last appointments that she's had or things that she has done, but certainly somebody that from what we know, has a very strong reputation. So that will be interesting to watch today. Yeah, I don't know that there will be a lot of drama there either, although I would say the same thing applies to Kelly Armstrong that applies to Kevin Cramer. That I think when Republicans, even those who may personally like Kevin, Kelly, Doug, John Hoeven, when those people feel like there needs to be something changing in politics and their people, that feeling of discord can work its way pretty quickly through a group. And I know that people are frustrated with what's happening in DC. And I know there are some in this party who believe that the people that are in Washington, DC are not fighting hard enough. And then there are a lot of people who feel like these people are doing great and they walk on water. So it just depends on what group of people is here today. as far as what's going to happen. So could there be something similar, sort of a protest vote or a uncommitted or something like that? I think that's all possible, and we'll watch to see what happens today.
And then, of course, the resolutions. There's a couple of resolutions that have been hot button topics. What do you see of the resolutions this afternoon? That's going to be obviously the one resolution on human life. That's going to be very heated, intense, whatever word you want to use it. But a lot of resolutions this afternoon.
Yeah, that one, and then the one about carbon capture is
Right.
another
Yeah.
one. I think there are a lot of people in the state that are trying to figure out what to make of carbon capture. I'll raise my hand. I'm one of those people. I believe the climate change narrative is a complete hoax. I believe it is an unprovable theory that is being put out there to consolidate power and money for an agenda, to pick the winners. And what we see from these groups is that they're much more concerned with making a scene than they really seem to be with the climate. And it doesn't stand up to the scrutiny of logic and rational conversation. We can talk all we want about what happens in this country, but what happens if we could completely cut every emission we have? China, Russia, India, those kinds of countries pollute at a far greater clip than we do. So, is anything that we do statistically, which is a drop in the bucket, going to cause some sort of a change in worldwide temperatures or storms or things like that? These things just don't make sense. They really don't. And so a lot of people here are very partial to what coal, oil, natural gas do for our state. More than half of the money that comes into our state, our tax money, is directly from those fossil fuels. So I think there are a lot of people here who say anything that you want to throw out there that has to do with climate change, I don't want to hear about it. When you talk about capturing carbon and storing it underground, don't want to hear about it. We need these things. We need carbon dioxide to make our plants and trees and all those things grow. Why are we going to try to bury that in the ground? And I think a lot of people just say, whatever, there may be uses for it in industry. There may be some good things here. It might provide some opportunity, but I don't understand it, or what I do understand, I don't like, and I just want to stay away from it altogether. And so that's going to be an interesting one today to see the whole business of carbon capture and climate change, how that factors into the conversation here today. That one could be a very spirited one. I don't know with the resolutions if they allow testimony on behalf of the delegates. My sense is that they do. I'm not a veteran of these conventions. This is probably the first one I've ever really been to or covered. But if there is an opportunity for conversation, that one will be very interesting. I don't know that we'll have a lot of debate on the life one. It feels to me like even people that are very pro-life say we cannot make a felon out of the mother. Who may
Right.
be in a very difficult situation, backed into a corner. It's not right to do that to a person who's struggling. The industry that allows it to happen is what needs to be cracked down on. I don't I just don't sense that that's going to be a major debate today. It might be, and I might be wrong on that, but I think the carbon capture one will be very interesting. You'll hear some people on the industrial side who say this will help us be better at producing oil and natural gas. So let's use this, use the game, use the system to further or use this game to further our system in the state by having this and making our wells much more productive with the enhanced oil recovery. So that one could have some pretty good conversation. The rest of them feel like to me that these are things that may not draw a whole lot of debate, but we'll see. I've been surprised already a number of times here so far this weekend.
Well, Steve, I'm sure we'll have a much more about this on the Steve Hallstrom Show on Monday.
Yeah, and Scott and I will be doing a summary video at the end of the day where we'll recap some of these afternoon conversations as well. But yes, we'll definitely be talking about these things on Monday afternoon, starting at 4 o'clock.
Speak of the governor candidate, Kelly Armstrong, in the House. We'll catch up with Kelly later this afternoon. Steve, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Chris. Appreciate all your work, buddy. Thanks
You
for
bet.
the good effort today.
You bet. Steve Hallstrom joining us here on the digital platforms of Flag Family Media. We'll take a break. Check back with you later this afternoon, right here. For the entire Flag Family team, I'm Chris Larson. See you later this afternoon.